First things first, I'ma say all the words inside my head. I'm fired up and tired of the way that things have been. Oh, ooh, the way that things have been. Oh, ooh. Second thing, second, don't you tell me what you think that I can be. I'm the one at the sail, I'm the master of my sea. Oh, ooh, the master of my sea. Oh, I was broken from a young age, taking my soak into the masses, writing my poems for the few that look at me, took to me, shook at me, feeling me, singing from heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing the beauty through the... Hey, you burn me up, believer, believer. Hey, you burn me down, you burn me up,
Now, here are your intrepid hosts of Unseen Storm, J6 Revealed, Cindy Young, and Tommy Tatum.
Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of January 6th Revealed, the Unseen Storm. And this week we have a special guest with us, Sarah Carpenter, the legend herself, and maybe she's going to tell us a little bit about her Tambourine of Doom this week. And also my intrepid co-host, we're all J6ers, Cindy Young. Tell us all about your past week and what we got coming up this week. I'm all excited if you can't tell.
Well, I'm happy to have Sarah joining us today. I've been wanting to meet her and talk to her. Actually, early on, Sarah, I don't know if you remember, but Jonathan Gross, my attorney, I think he might be yours as well. Remember we were on a video with him and he had all his friends.
Yes, in Baltimore, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. So I had mentioned to him that you were going to be on the show with us today, and he goes, "Oh, she's a lovely girl." He likes you.
John is the best, right?
I love John. I always brag on John, and I'm sorry, Cindy. You talked about John. I got excited because Sarah. I don't know how much you follow my social media and stuff, but I was really, really hard on most of the lawyers because they deserved it. But John deserves all the praise in the world because John really cared about us, and I could tell that he would just call me up and ask me questions. But did you know this is in the footage? He would run across it. It would be like, yeah, I knew John's like the only person to ever do stuff like that, especially the lawyer. So I knew he was working and doing everything he could. So I love John. So he's all three of ours lawyers. Is that the case?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So yeah. So we have to make sure John gets a copy of this show, right? That could be scary or happy for him. Yeah, I'm just picking. But I'm going to back up a little bit. We all know each other real well, and most of our viewers are very familiar with January 6th. But for those who may not be that familiar as we all are, Sarah or Cindy, would you like to take a moment to kind of describe a little bit about your history is what I'm getting into, Sarah, because Sarah is one of these human beings whom God seemed fit to have them at both these extremely historic events. And Sarah, you deserve all the credit in the world. You was a police officer. I'll let you describe the details of all of it. But at 9/11 is what I'm getting at. And then God also saw fit to have you at January the 6th. So if you'd like to take just a moment, we can dive into some of the stories, but just a brief description of what that was like, the journey. I mean, I know it's not easy to do in just a couple seconds, but give us your spiel, I guess.
Well, I'll do it in a sense, what they did and just work backwards, because it's quite remarkable, really. And I myself sometimes like get a little like I really have to document more, because it's been to have been in both I don't want to call it incidents, right? In what do you call terrorist attacks, domestic
Mhm.
terrorist attack, and not by us.
Yeah.
January 6th was not a domestic terrorist attack by us. It did have foreign entities, we do know that, and it did have domestic terrorists as far as, at this point, Congress members.
I agree. I agree, and I think it was actually a little more organized than just a passing thing. I do think there was an organized conspiracy against us, but
Yes, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And we were, and just for a little context, I'm in New York at the America First warehouse. Got me a little working spot, so that explains the signs. But I also ran into Sarah. Sarah's a New Yorker, and I ran into her yesterday, and we were talking about some of this about. I guess like the journaling. I think we talked about this here about I was mentioning how I have a Substack now, and we're talking about I've been suggesting all January Sixers do it, and don't even think about it like it was I'm a writer and I'm writing this, but it's writing down all these details that are going to fade in time, because your grandkids are going to want to know this story, like every little detail you think is unimportant. So, and I think that'll help us as I see J6ers who went more through the system, like you guys both went through the system. I never had to go to trial, right? So I see more and more of those guys like you, who went through that extra reign of terror, I'll call it, but come full circle to where they're wanting to tell their story in their own voice. And they're getting to a point because they're not so involved in the day-to-day traumatizing of it happening to them every day. So that's what I've been suggesting. And Cindy, you're able to do the we do this live stream here once a week, and then you have the other show, which I also suggest to everybody to do that long form interview with you, because I think you do a lot of good when you I think it's therapeutic for people when they go on your show.
Ah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to get into was your tambourine. And I think were you charged with a felony for that?
So I have to get, it's terrible. This is especially why I have to write everything down and have it in front of me, because I kind of took this back. Like, once I saw how out of control it had become, like at first I was like, oh, I got to get my narrative out there. I'm sorry, I seem like I'm not addressing your question, but in a way, I I felt right after, when I got home and I saw how they were twisting it,
Mhm.
right away I was like, I gotta push what really happened. I gotta get my voice out there. I gotta say. And that's when, like, I had already been censored. I had already been through all that.
Yeah,
And
so Sarah, take a moment. We have all the time in the world too. So you were telling me yesterday about what you were doing before January 6th. You already had a calling. You were doing your thing there, and then this kind of took you. January 6th obviously took your focus off of that for a moment. But I believe you were saying you were coming back around to that. What were you tell me about that
well,
work?
no, that's the amazing part of it. I had, just before COVID had hit, I had been working on an art project,
Yes,
and
yes.
but then COVID. I was planning on actually a trip to Israel. I had the flight booked, everything. My son was going to go with me, a part of the research for my art project, and then COVID hit, and then it got into all the. I was a lone fighter in his school, going after. I couldn't connect with other parents. They were all just
She's describing, like in New York, it was especially bad. I'm sure I wasn't here, but she's like the isolation, and like they cut off communications basically. So you couldn't
threats.
even
I
talk to each
mean,
other.
people
Yeah.
absolutely were toxic towards me, and all these women, like, they grouped together, all the moms, like, and they all went with it. And I thought to myself, my God, you're how ignorant, and but I was never rude. I was always peaceful. I was always just very persistent and putting out the truth of what I knew, and the masks also. That really, I had a hard time with that, because down in 9/11 we wore masks like that, and I guess it was just reminding me of it. And we know they don't. I knew they didn't work, and I got thrown out of doctors' offices because I wouldn't wear them. Even after telling them, we're in this together, right? I have a problem with the mask. But nope, didn't matter, right?
You know, that's still fascinating to me. I guess as a society, like everybody who was trying to make us wear those ridiculous things forever, I guess we're just not going to address that, right? We're just going to let these doctors and lawyers and all these professional people who are all supposed to be so much smarter than us get away with making us, like, trying to make it where you can't feed your kids, have a job, get medical care over an absolute lie, over fiction.
But let's protest for no kings. But we're going to tell you, wear a mask, 6 feet away, all of the bullshit that they did. And
or even just the obvious, in the real time, the obvious contradiction of, oh, you're going to wear that mask and also abortion for everybody. I'm like, well, you can tell me what to do whenever it's like wearing this ridiculous thing. But whenever it comes to ending the human life, I have no say so. So that's the logic we're working with. Okay.
So do you feel, though, Sarah, that because you were a strong advocate in the school system with the moms, do you think they were surveilling you then? Were they?
Listen, it's really.
I know why you're asking that, Cindy. Go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
But what's interesting, just really quick, should we clue them in that July 4th is the No King's Day? Like, we do celebrate it. Hello. But yeah, no, I had seen and again, like, when I would speak, people literally looked at me like I was crazy. Like, oh, she's a little out there. She's a conspiracy. And I'm like, I'm pointing out the obvious. And so it's, I would see a drone above I belonged to the same parish, same church, 50 years, lived in the same neighborhood, 50 years. I saw a drone. It would be hovering over the school and it's a school and church in the mornings. And I tried to bring that to people's attention and they'd be like, okay. And I'm like, no,
you were absolutely right. Yeah.
And not only that, they had a man come in giving out books for free. When you read the fine print of who he used to work at the Pentagon. And he was giving out all these free books in the church and trying to financially support. It was all of it. And everybody just went right along with it. And I was getting more and more ostracized, the more, and they'd accuse me of things. And I say, look, I'm not pushing you. I'm not hurting you. Somebody accused me of being like you're hard as a wall. I said, exactly. You're pushing up against a wall. I'm not.
That's right. Amen, sister. So we got into this a little bit, Cindy. I think we've spoken about this too. About COVID driving a lot of people, ruining a lot of people's lives, which led them to be at January 6th. And Sarah, I was telling you yesterday some of the saddest things I've seen. Because most of the footage I've ever took the time to make a video out of shows like really blatant police brutality or something. But what the footage is full of, it's like kind of hard to watch. It's thousands, like hundreds I've watched of protesters sitting there and they're telling what happened in their lives, and they're completely destroyed. These mandates destroyed like everything, their jobs, their kids, suicides, divorce, all of it. And they're sitting there pleading to this police officer who has no control over any of that. Right. I get that. And it was just so symbolic of, I think it was MLK who said, and I got my issues with him, but this quote is true, that a riot is the language of the unheard. Well, these people were begging a representative of their government to hear them, and they got tear gassed and grenaded, as a response. So I would at some point, I think I'm gonna come back and maybe show some. It's so emotionally draining though, but so Sarah, your story, and I've heard this from other guys when I did the vigil, describe COVID and the mandates is what absolutely brought them to where they were in life, and that's kind of the same story you're describing now.
I knew that they were kidnapping. I knew they were kidnapping children.
Go ahead and get into it. Yeah, go ahead.
That, and also killing Planned Parenthood, killing babies and selling body parts. All this I knew. It's people are just catching up now. They say, "Oh, you were so angry," or "I wouldn't have purported to go into the Capitol," and I say, "Well, that's you. We have we're two very different beasts." People like in the Capitol, the police were provoking, right?
And so Sarah, let me get into this because I was talking to our. No, you're fine. I know exactly, because I wanted to address this because it really is not a laughing matter. We're laughing because it's so over the top ridiculous. I was telling our good buddy Joe the Box about this the other day, and he hadn't heard that. So I do want to tell people this. So what I'm referring to is in the footage, this police officer comes up to Sarah and provokes her, insults her, and then she responds, and then they take that response completely out of context and plaster it all over the place. And I think that it made a really sexy headline to these liberals for Trump supporter, 9/11 police officer, because they were trying to convince the world that there's a white supremacist movement in the military and in the police. You know, that whole color revolution, that psyop that they were doing to us in 2020. I think this is what you're getting into, Cindy. She made a really sexy target because she ticked off a couple boxes.
I'm testing a theory as I go along, and I really think that there were several of us that were very strong advocates for different things along the way. The masking with COVID, going to school board meetings, and being strong advocates. I really think that they were tracking us, and when we came to the Capitol, they knew who we were and they knew what they were going to do with us. This is what I believe.
I think you're right, Cindy. Before you respond, Sarah, I think you're right, and I have not that this next name I'm going to say is represents any of these causes I'm talking about. He actually represents a great cause. I'm talking about Brandon Straka. But I always saw him as the low-hanging fruit, the guy who is a threat to the system, especially him convincing Democrats to walk away. But also the social media following that they went after those people, but then they also, it seemed like there was no cutoff level to where they would stop. Like you have to have 10,000 followers before they would come after you. Like if you were successful in your small town community, even I think there was to what you're saying. Go ahead.
Well, think about it too. So you lost your Facebook, right? I lost my Facebook. If they wanted to take all of what we had, they could do that. They didn't have to terminate the pages that we had, but they did have to stop us from being able to communicate out because we had a following. I had a big following. I had a business, and I had many people from the business. So I think if you had a voice, you were a target. That's what I believe.
Did you find that a lot of things going prior, my messages would double? So I didn't have a following. I was so, people just absolutely, it was like hyenas going after it was like I was literally surrounded by hyenas.
Like blood in the water, a bunch of sharks.
The way the women, like other moms, and the way they would go at me, and so nasty, like it was ridiculous. Because like somebody used to tag me, I'm Second Amendment, I'm pro guns, and this woman would go to rallies against it, somebody who I knew on Facebook, and she would tag me as being at the rallies. Do you understand what I'm saying?
We follow.
Okay, yeah. So it's like they're so diabolical. They were acting so.
The level of hate, Sarah. Like I think we all remember back. Like it reminds me of that experiment they did at the prison. It's the famous one. They made movies about it, to where they get these regular guys, and half of them pretend to be guards, and the other half pretend to be the prisoners or whatever. And it's something about human nature. We will become sadistic very quickly if we're given permission to, which is very, very scary, because the government gave half this country permission to absolutely terrorize the other half.
Yeah, and it's shameful, and I think that's a big part is why it's so slow to get the truth out, is because they're possibly they just can't admit to themselves how they're so bitter, and they're so filled with hate. And that's why, like, really, like the whole time my place is peace. Like I really found peace after 9/11. God showed me, healed me from.
So walk us through that just a little. I don't expect you
about 9/11.
I don't want you to get I don't want it to be triggering to you, but if you can walk us through, who, what, when, where, why. Whatever level you're from.
Well, I don't know how to. You're right. I don't know how to shorten it, and I don't know how to. But essentially,
take your time.
Well, I was a police officer for 9 years when it happened, and I actually, the city was just, there was like just before January 6th, tension building, things that you couldn't quite put your, especially 9/11, you couldn't quite put your finger on it. But I could sit here and give you a list of little details that, so there's so much to talk about leading up to it.
Mhm.
And I have an art degree, and I said, you know what? There's something in my spirit. Like, I just can't live like this anymore. I can't, there's something about this. Everything has just become, it's me. Like, I kept feeling it's me. I'm not right. I don't like who I'm becoming. I got to walk away from everything, and I'm just
Mhm.
going to be an artist.
Yes.
And that's what I was going to do. And I took my 2 weeks of vacation. The boss said, okay, don't respond back to, the precinct I was working at. Go straight down to One Police Plaza and put in your retirement papers on September 12th,
Really?
2001.
Wow.
Really? Really?
So, and a friend of mine asked me to do a painting for his wedding. He was a
Mhm.
fireman, and he was
Mhm.
getting married, and he had this great view where had been living, and it had the skyline, and he wanted the Twin Towers right in the middle. And so he asked me he had seen me on the beach painting and stuff. So he asked me to do this. So I procrastinated to, almost the last days of my vacation. And I said, let me do this. So on September 10th, 2001, I was painting the Twin Towers, and a clouds rolled in. So I couldn't finish. And I said, I'll come back tomorrow.
Mhm.
And the next day, instead, I actually went down to the towers. So a friend of mine, called me up and said, he was a construction worker. He was on top of one of the buildings in Brooklyn, and he called me and he said, "Hey, Sarah, I just saw a plane a plane just hit the building. The towers are on fire." So I didn't have a TV at the time. I ran over to my parents nearby. My dad was sitting there watching it. I looked on the news, and my dad just said two words, three words: "We're at war."
Mm.
And I said, "Oh." So I figured, okay, let me get into the city. Let me get
What
into the city. We got to get bodies out of there.
what had your father done I'm just curious, what had your father done as a career? Was
He was
yeah,
a teacher. He
he
was
was
a
a teacher.
principal. He was an assistant principal, and my mom
Okay.
also. They both had worked.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. So he was a member of community, he was engaged and everything. Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, go
Same
ahead with the story.
parish, 50
Sorry to
years.
interrupt it, but I was just curious. I wanted to know what kind of heroes produce another hero like you, Sarah? Because you
Oh,
really are. I know you don't see it, but you're a living American hero. You've been through these really historic things, and I think God is still using it and developing a plan for your greatest work is still yet to come, Sarah. I just feel that.
well, Jesus is the hero of the story
Hmm.
because he saved the world. You hear this sometimes, help save the world, right? There's a certain letter that says, save the world. And I often say, the world has been saved, act accordingly.
That's sweet.
So,
Hey, Josh Pruitt's in here. Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Josh is a
Hi,
veteran. Yeah, Josh. Hey, now. Sarah, I don't know if you met Josh. Josh is a big J6 reporter. He's been to Freedom Corner a lot, and he
oh,
lives there
God
in
bless you.
D.C. Yeah, he's a real good guy. He has an amazing story himself. So,
God bless.
Josh, if you have any questions for Sarah at any point, just let us know. Anyway, Sarah, Cindy, where were you?
So
Did
just
oh,
I
sorry.
responded that day. We had to work down there for a few months after it. I began to just have this. I I do run. I am an artist by nature. That's my creativity, things like that. I'm not a. That's my default, right? This was just too much. My brain to capture what I saw, to understand it all, to know. And even in the building on January 6th, when a man whispered in my ear, which, Tommy, I got to zero in on this video.
Okay.
He kind of says in my ear, this is like 9/11. He says this in the building on January 6th when I was confronting what I thought was Antifa. Like,
Mm-hmm.
literally in the moment, they
We
did
Mm-hmm.
all
not
did.
act like cops. They were
Yep.
like
I'm gonna
Antifa.
find that footage. Kevin, remind me. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna work that footage up. It's just
So
like this is like the fourth time this weekend that I've been wished I had it already done. So we're gonna do that, Sarah.
Yeah, no, I know you got your hands full too. I
Yeah.
got to do my computer's not anyway.
Yeah, I hear you. Go ahead.
So he whispers in my ear, this is like 9/11, and I push him. I'm like, this is nothing like 9/11. I was at 9/11. I said, my sergeant died in 9/11. Like, I never talk about 9/11. Like, literally, I don't talk about it other than the art project that I began, a
Hmm.
memorial every year. Like, that's where my focus. If I'm talking about 9/11, it's centered. I don't just start yelling about it in the. He brought it up. I wouldn't have done that. That man. So that shows that they were already put in that narrative.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
brilliant, Sarah. You're right. I mean, now that taking a big step back, yeah. Because we all know lots of J6ers were little bitty. Like I was 2 blocks away from the Capitol, and this guy come weirdly saying, it didn't add. Yeah, I think you're right. And Sarah, we were also, you mentioned during our conversation about how early on in the day the media was using regime-approved language, words like insurrection, when nothing was really going on. Did you bring that up the other day?
I don't
It
recall.
could have been another
Maybe in
conversation I was
retrospect.
having with someone, but you reminded me of that, and I remembered somebody else like before, and I think Lara Logan told me, or maybe in an interview she gave somewhere, to where if you look at the language, the people that are involved in the op are using, especially the media side, it'll match up with the approved narrative. Like they'll start calling an insurrection at 11 a.m. before anything's ever happened that day, and they were doing that day, like they were pushing the deadly which I don't want to sound too conspiratorial, but I do know of people receiving phone calls saying there was a woman shot inside the Capitol before anybody ever went in the Capitol that day. So it's not beyond the stretch of the imagination, I don't think.
Now, discovering how diabolical they are, like it really, like being a police officer in Manhattan, in New York, there's evil out. Like I know. But what has really taken me back with this whole experience is I always held out that little bit of faith in people, especially when you're dealing with them one-on-one, like my attorney and other police officers. To think that they have become so involved in an evil
I've often thought this too, Sarah. Like I think this is how I describe it. Is because not to ring our own bells, because most conservatives and people who have God in their life have a faith that they live by, a code of principles. We just assume that the next American citizen, our American brothers and citizens, are minding their business too. What's scary about it is no, some of these people are Marxist communists who are plotting our demise, who want us dead if we don't kiss their butts and do what they tell us to. And they're walking around winning elections and are police officers, doctors, lawyers, and that's what's scary to me is that they're actively out there plotting and scheming for my demise. And like it's so foreign to us that we don't. It's kind of scary. I mean, I don't even know how to explain it anymore. I think a lot of you found out the hard way.
Well, I think it's always been there in a way, but it's definitely something has activated a whole nother level and of going against what we know is. I heard a young girl the other day. She was protesting out and she was saying how this country is built on lies and murder and And I thought, oh my God, you poor thing! Like you've got it backwards. This country was built to fight against that.
Well, that's projection. That's them projecting their subconscious, their own plans, which is usually those younger ones are those useful idiots. But I agree with what you're saying. It's always been there. I was speaking about this earlier today with someone. I do feel like with 2020, with this whole psyop, how the other side, I hate to say the other side because they're human beings too. Most of them are just confused and tricked. I don't think there's a lot of just straight evil human beings in the world. She's moving around the apartment and her signal popped down. She'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry about that.
We can still hear her. There you go. But people were given permission. They were encouraged. And it's fascism. It's like, I don't want to throw that word around too lightly, but it is a tactic that the Nazis use. Like, go tell on your neighbors. If you see them doing this, if you see your mama and daddy doing this, kid, go tell on them, report them to the system. So the other side was given permission. And it's like that prison experiment we were just talking about. If you give people permission to be sadistic, it's very scary what human beings can come up with. There you go. We got you back.
About that, the battery.
So
go ahead, Cindy. Sorry.
After 9/11, and then you went through January 6th, did that change your perspective on what happened on 9/11 at all?
Well, after 9/11, like I said, I had a problem. I couldn't stop crying, honestly. Like I tried to hold it in there. I tried to stay as long as I could. But fortunately, the job was did recognize it as a disability from, from what they did to us, right? So I never quit the job. I never quit the
Yeah,
job.
so you had scheduled for the 12th to retire. So
Yeah.
had that unfold real quick as you move into January 6th.
Because I responded and I was working, and then essentially, like, I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't function in that manner, and it was recognized that from the gravity of what occurred, and I was retired on a disability from 9/11.
So they gave you a
And
PTSD, something along those lines.
really bad, really,
Yeah.
where I like blank. Like, I remember walking in Manhattan, like I all of a sudden caught myself, like it was like I woke up in Manhattan one day.
Well, hey, Sarah,
Walking.
real quick. I know Josh is a veteran. I know we have lots of veterans walking. This is a perfect segue. I think maybe even me and you were speaking about this too the other day. But I'm making an effort to not call it PTSD anymore because my friend Josh Macias from Veterans for Trump was explaining it to me. It's power in language too. So when we call it a disorder, that makes it seem like I was born with this. Well, this is an injury. You received an injury, Sarah, from when you went to work. It happened to you. It's like a person with their leg cut off is not a disorder. You're born with a disorder. This is an injury that happened to you when you were defending our nation and serving the nation. So that's why when you hear me refer to you as a hero, I know Jesus is the hero, but you are too, Sarah. Just so you know, I know you may not see yourself
Well,
that
through
way.
his strength, he says, through him. So through his strength, and it literally was because I had always, known him through Catholic school and things like that. But this is when I really learned he's your friend. He is your protector. He is your everything. And I began to lean on him because I really was downsliding in a way that was really bad. Like I said, I was walking in Manhattan and I was passing a little girl, and the little girl said to her mother, "Mommy, that lady's dying," and it was just like this wake up call to, like, my God, I
The
gotta get
Bible
it.
verse, out of the mouth of babes comes truth. I don't, Kevin, maybe he knows the exact quote, but it's so true, is it not? The little kids are so perceptive sometimes.
And I didn't want to have that. I didn't want a little girl to, I didn't want children to see me in that light. And I had a child unexpectedly. When I tell you that that's what turned me around. It's amazing. God has this thing with life, how it rejuvenates, because honestly, it saved my life, really, having a baby, choosing life. And
did this child happen after 9/11 or before?
yeah, he really was, like, it was kind of a, unplanned, and so
we call those what do you call those, blessing babies? Instead of calling, my mama used to say, instead of saying you were an accident, like the last child, like mom and daddy, whatever, bonus baby is what we were called.
bonus. Yes, baby. For sure.
Yeah.
So no, it just eventually, but I started to really, I was always researching, like, how did 9/11, like, because I worked with a few of the men who died, and I never worked with Moira Smith. She was a female police officer who died helping people get out. But I knew them, and I just knew it's such good people, and perished, and I just couldn't forget. That saying, 9/11, don't forget. It's a statement. It's not a command. It's a statement. We won't forget. Like, I'm not going to forget. And so it was always a research thing. And as I was researching it, that's when I started to really get, like, And then as soon as the COVID hit and all that, then I was like, oh no, Cuomo trying to shut down eateries. This is full on tyrants, and everybody was going along with it, and that shocked me.
That's what scared me the most too. Is like, I'm watching, like, for me, I think it's not like I was discovering this stuff about the end times. I'm like, this is what I've learned in church my entire life, and here it is, Revelations is playing out right here in front of the TV, and nobody else seems to see it, right? And then that's when they started that's when you start getting disinvited to the Thanksgivings and stuff, right?
Christmas, everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Cindy, did you experience these things too? I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think I questioned 9/11 before January 6th, only because of what I was looking at and the people I was, engaging with, listening to. But there was just so much that didn't make sense about it. And then to go through January 6th and see what the government did to us and what they felt they were, you know, supposed to do, able to do to us. It just,
You know
it,
how a moment ago I was talking about how it's scary to realize these people are plotting against you and you're just walking around, meandering around life, not knowing it. When I go back and look at every major like event that happened in American news, like all of the school shootings, all the tragedies, almost it scares me. Like I think the one that really did it for me was Mindy Robinson. I think that's her proper name. It's a really good journalist, and she did a documentary about Las Vegas, and it's not too far removed from our current times, right? And to go back and see what they got away with then, having lived through January 6th and seeing how they cover everything up on the other side of it, it's terrifying to realize what this government will do.
right. And I really truly believe there isn't one thing when we look at Ruby Ridge, we look at Oklahoma bombing, Waco, 9/11.
I think it's absolutely all connected.
They've had their fingers in all of it.
And they were provoking these guys along the way. They could have arrested them 2 weeks before, but no, they got to make it a big deal out of it. They got to get those budgets going on. And that's even the nicer reasonings. But go, Sarah, so you had this baby, you dive really hard into 9/11, and then around the time January 6th is coming along, you just get reinvigorated with your advocacy. Am I saying that correctly? And that's what led you to January 6th. Is that
well? And
fair?
just so you know, too, like I wasn't sitting there like,
No.
I literally was living very, like, I really putting my trust and my sights on Christ and having a child. So I was developing an art program. I was volunteering everywhere. Like I volunteered at the horse stables near me.
So you're on a real good trajectory in life. You finally, you went through all these really amazing stories and you found an outlet. Like this expression through the art is basically what you're pouring your life into.
Everything. Right. I went to the stables to draw the horses, and I have a coloring book series on the horses. I have a coloring book. It's part of the series. It's The Park by Me. And, so I was also, I was asked by my son's teacher over in the public school near me to develop a class for the fourth graders because they don't teach art. And so she wanted to teach them perspective. So that opened up that's a whole nother realm, which it's a shame. Like it holds you back from growing because if I wish I could just tell you all about that and get that off the ground.
I'll tell you what, I'll tell you, just so you know, we own this show right here. And we can have you back as many times as we want to. We can go in the future. We can talk about any and all those things, Sarah.
Just well, so like you said,
and then Cindy has a long form show. Yes,
I'm solely. So Mother Teresa said, and I know a lot of they even throw Mother Teresa under the bus, saying she was selling babies. Like, oh my God, whatever. It's at this point, all I know is what I know, right? And peace begins with a smile, and a lot of that is true. But her quote is, they will tear everything down. They will take everything from you. Just start again. So that's where I'm at, is just starting again. So you had suggested I send you the thing. I will send you, once I get it to a link, I'll send it to you.
Yes.
But essentially, I was really not focused on the negative part of the government. That was the 9/11 was just a research, and it was coming out. I then I do a 9/11 art memorial. I had done that for like 5 years. I could get one or two friends. I got like one friend or two friends to kind of help me with it. But other than that, when I tell you, people really were really showing their own hearts. That's what art does, really. It's
actually amazing. That's amazing perspective, because I wish I knew more about art and like the philosophy of it. Well, go ahead. Don't let me interrupt you. I'm bad about that.
Well, that's the beauty of it too, the art class for the kids, because it's all based on, there is a truth to art. So you know how like modern art, they do all this chaos and all this, right?
I think that's subversion on purpose, don't you? Like the ugliness of all of it. Yeah, go ahead.
But what's interesting is they can't get away from the truth, because their chaos is built on the fact that there is a truth. Like it only brings out the fact that with architecture, who's going to want to go into who's going to want to cross a bridge that was built by a modern artist? You know, it's not going to be sturdy because it's not the focal point. You know, it's not built on the measurements. It's built on chaos.
Exactly. I follow you. I follow you. Absolutely. I follow you.
So there's a form of art that is based truly just on science. It's not a matter of being creative. It's a matter of just looking at the creator's work.
That's really interesting.
Reinterpreting the creator's work.
That's very interesting. I've always heard like when you ask a musician, like, what does that song mean? He's like, whatever you think it means. Like that artist, he has a reason why he wrote those lyrics, but ultimately it means whatever you heard it to mean.
And you can understand it as music because it's based on a truth, principles of sound waves, of a science.
I think there's like even a way deep down, like a metaphysical science that explains like human beings and their reaction to sound waves, and even like maybe ancient heavenly languages, even. Different discussion, but go ahead. But I think
it's Tony, is that we can always wrap that right around back to January 6th.
January 6th, because we were talking about like deep in some of the footage. This is really, it's not obscure. You have to know what you're the footage can seem so chaotic because that's what it is, literally almost. Just
wait a minute. Can you say that again, Sarah? Sound waves. What were you saying?
Somebody was saying that they have DARP, right? Ways of crowd control through sound.
Yeah. And
I heard they did it inverted, where instead of pushing the crowd away, it was to antagonize the crowd.
I don't think that's too far from the truth, Sarah. And although I'm not his biggest fan in the world, Steve Baker has done some recording about that very thing.
Yes, he has. Yeah.
I see. When I saw the footage of myself, I said, "Wow, that doesn't even look like me. I'd never get like that."
Yeah, so I always tell people like
Jonathan said to me too, he said, that isn't like you, that's out of your character. And I think the combination of that with the munitions, they knew exactly what they
were. The year-long psychological operation, the gaslighting, all of it, like the whole year, all of it.
Yeah.
I also, Sarah, just so you know, I met the man who was a J6er. I met him in person, and he told me he was a special weapons specialist or some similar title in the military. And he said that there was gas there that he said, I don't know what that stuff was. I had never seen it before. What he said. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you know the same guy. There's probably 2 or 3 of them or more.
I've interviewed him and he,
Wow.
So when there's so many forks in the road to end like this, like, oh my, like this is why ultimately I wish all January 6th, there's 2 things would get on board with the Roseanne Woolen Act, and also I forget what I was going to say because I've been thinking about the Roseanne Woolen Act because it does not get to the settlements with the government for $1 million does not get to the ultimate truth, and it does not protect us 50 years down the road with the great grandkids. This is what I was going to say. I want there to be a church committee so we can finally get to the real truth. And then like these little things like this, we can finally have an answer to. We have a mechanism to get to the truth, which is a subpoena and arrest powers. Right. Mm-hmm. And as far as I forget who I was telling to, I think it was Teresa here, T-Mac, they call her here at the America's First Warehouse, that I personally don't want to be these police officers or these politicians, judge, jury, and executioner. I'll kind of work myself through that anger and all that. But I demand the American people know the truth, and then they decide what happens.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. To me, justice has nothing to do with money. To me, justice is righting wrongs, getting these people out of the positions that they hold.
Holding them accountable. Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, people are allowed to feel however they want to. And believe me, when it comes to Mickey Whitehall, most people do not know what she was trying to accomplish, and had nothing to do with money. I'll say that. But I will say this. I personally feel like it doesn't matter the size of the check. The only way I know, I keep saying this, that the government admits it's at fault is when it writes somebody a check. So I'm not opposed to seeing, and I also think there's a very legitimate reason for the money, because you will never convince me that these Democrats won't spend their entire existence, every waking moment like they did to us, trying to ruin your kid's life because it has the same name as you. And I keep saying they will be motivated and petty enough to do it because they can never beat Donald Trump. But they think they'll probably figure they can beat your grandkid. and keep that grandkid from getting into that school or getting into that job because there's a great grandkid of an insurrectionist.
Yeah.
So that's why I think
I get it. I don't even want to go to the doctors or well, anyway, I'd like to focus for a moment back on the, what's interesting is like what we're talking about. We could absolutely, it would take us hours, right, to sit and go over all the things that the government
it
has.
took us weeks.
Well, I shouldn't even say the government. It's like the deep government, right, or the deep state,
The deep
right?
state.
I mean,
Yep.
because of the corporation. Because
It's
I feel
fascism.
like
It really is fascism. It gets back to not wanting to sound like everybody's Hitler. If I don't agree with Hitler, but it really is fascism. Like on a very the pure definition of them is when the government and corporations fuse together and are a tyrant to the people. Well, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Google, Facebook, how they shut us down. We can't talk, and then they were just symbiotic. It's come out in the only good thing that came out of the last 4 years is of the on Capitol Hill is some of the work that Louder Muck's committee did with the exposing the Biden crime family, all the stuff they did. But we run into that problem where they commit so many dastardly deeds of treason. Like, which one do you focus on out of the hundreds of examples of it? Which one? Like, I think Hunter Biden should have to pay a price for the sex trafficking. I think that's rather significant, right? I think that's way more significant than some tax law he broke or some NARA registration. Perhaps the trafficking of human beings and selling them sexually across state and international lines is a more serious crime that should be addressed.
You would think. It's unbelievable see what they do, I think, is bury us the way January 6th and 9/11 is similar as well, is we're buried.
Yes.
We're buried under lies.
And they know this, Sarah. They know that, okay, even if they do win the presidency back, we will have done so much treason. They will spend the next 4 years trying to undo it all. And they won't be able to catch up. You know what I'm saying?
No, say that again. It sounded like you said.
I think these Democrats, they intentionally plan, we're going to steal this election. And then we're going to do so much stuff that when they do take the White House back in 4 years, that president will have to spend his administration undoing all the dirt and illegal things they did. That's exactly what we see. And the judges are helping the Democrats now with their mutiny.
They're kings. The judges consider themselves kings. They're acting like kings. And the fact that, see, this is what grips me is, and this is where I have to go in the direction that I have to go in, because it really is sad to me. I really do pity them. Like, of course, there's times where it's like when you think of it on a mono against mono level, which they're at, that's where they are. They're on a it's me against you level.
Flesh against flesh, right? Flesh against flesh.
I don't pivot that way. It's not me against you. It's me.
I sincerely agree with you, sir. I don't see them as my enemy. Even the ones that I'm angry with I see them, most of them, 90% of them I see as confused souls. Like, a lot of them have been taken advantage of, lied to, and they're just doing the best they can.
They don't know God. Think of that.
Yeah, they don't know God, right? And that's what that explains that emptiness. It explains that void in their soul that they're trying to fill with something they don't know what. And anger feels real good, like cocaine can feel real good, they say. But it can also kill you, right?
That's why you can't get anywhere with them either when you speak with them, because they're all in their frontal lobe. They're caught in this it's reptilian brain where it's to just argue and fight and see you as an enemy.
Some level, Sarah, but on some level, we're all human beings. We all have the God part of us. They, on some level, maybe subconsciously, but they know that God is true, and they're lashing out at it, right? They know it's tricky because, like, if a person, let's just say, quote unquote, is demon possessed or obsessed, they're human, but they've got this influence, but they're still responsible for their choices and their actions, right? So anyway, I'm getting a little sidetracked, but it is fast. It's just the devil coming out of people, and then there's a political party which encourages it and sets us apart from each other. It literally takes the worst things about human beings and amplifies it, and then puts us on a collision course with each other for their own power.
Well, here, Cindy, maybe you could relate to this as well, because were you political prior to this?
Yeah.
Hey, tell her real quick about how God's had. I don't know that she knows the story, but Cindy's life starts with an amazing story that Like, go ahead and tell her. Tell her.
No, we're not going to go there today. This is about Sarah.
Well, listen, Sarah, I will tell you as a friend. So Cindy was 18 months old. She was in lab with a plane crash that killed almost everybody on board, and they found her without a scratch on her.
This is crazy. I was just talking with my son the other day. He was going over old plane crash. We were talking about this the other day.
Yeah,
You don't even want to. I'll give you another little tidbit, only because it's all of a sudden come into my knowledge. I wrote a book about it, and I showcased every passenger that was on the plane. And one of the passengers that was on the plane with me was the head of the Atomic Energy Commission.
Yeah.
Yes. And now that I know what the government does when they want to, I mean, this was right in it was in 1958. Okay.
Yeah.
God has his hand in this.
Right when our government's having all these really big debates about should we have nuclear weapons or not, there's lots of communists infiltrating.
He was the mission that developed the H-bomb.
And I was, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
And then there was McCarthyism was going on at that time, and they were, talking about people that were communists. It's just history repeating itself, and I really question about that plane crash now, because she
tells us that because of January 6th, it had her go back and look at her entire life, and now she said, was that a political assassination?
Yeah.
And I hear 7 out of 10 plane crashes are very much that, are assassinations.
Well, that's crazy because, like I said, my son and I, for some reason, I forgot what brought it up, but we were talking about that guy from India, the guy from India who supposedly, so we were saying about how it's weird how sometimes people do survive these things. And we were looking up, and most of them are children. Yeah. So that's remarkable.
Really? Wow.
God
saving
really has his hand in this, because
it's a miracle, right?
And I ended up, I don't know if you know my story, but I ended up being sentenced to go to prison on January 28th. And on the 27th was when I got my pardon. So I never stepped foot, and I really believe that God was saying, not today, Satan.
So she had a little bit of a like, while we're all celebrating, Sarah, like, we know all the J6ers and everybody's getting their pardon, like, woohoo. Yeah. Then he's like, hold up a second. Like, because they gave her a little bit of paperwork, red tape, and she's like, I got to still go to jail. I'm like, y'all help me, right? So she had a little bit of a hiccup.
Yeah. Crazy. Wow. It's crazy.
It's amazing the stories. Just so it happens, but get together with J6ers and we could tell stories for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And it's amazing to me, like there's 1,500 people. There's a lot of stories to try to keep up with. And like, honestly, each person's story is just as interesting as maybe they don't have, the drama, the trauma, or things like that happen to them. But every person's story is an amazing story.
Well, they're gonna, after what they did, there's no way if you're not if you are not a sociopath, like literally
a narcissistic psychopath. A narcissistic psychopath is how I describe it.
A narcissistic psychopath might be like, oh, that didn't affect me whatsoever. Like, to me, you'd have to be in that realm. Like, I can understand saying, no, it affected me, but I overcame it, or I didn't let it get to me. I'm fighting back. Because that would be like going along with it and thinking that was normal, and it wasn't. That was not normal. That was not right. And that too, I find I have a lot of everybody went there for their own reasons, but they treated us all the same coming out. So I want to know who that man was who whispered in my ear. There was a few things, like in retrospect, it's so difficult. I want to track some of these people, because now, and again, we all went for different reasons. And if you went there and you got upset and you broke something, or you said something, or that's understandable, because it's nothing compared to what they're doing.
We were entrapped. This is why I hope in time, this is one thing in all sincerity, guys. I know what happened that day. Okay. We were entrapped. We were set up.
Everybody
it is completely illegal what the government did. But however, I know there are J6ers walking around feeling guilty to this day. You didn't do it. You did not. You don't need that. That's some of that terrorizing they did to you. You were set up. You're the victim. don't let them frame it as if you should be apologizing for something.
Oh no, I never apologize.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you are, but I see other J6ers. I see walking around with guilt and stuff. I see it. Like I'm going to say it bothers me that they are bothered by it. Go ahead.
Because it's so true. Because I tell you, even friends and family, they act like, well, you went in and you were yelling at police. And it's even got so bad, they say I pushed police. They turned it into I pushed police.
Oh, you got to tell us about the Tambourine of Doom before we run out of time. So tell us about the Tambourine of Doom.
Yeah, it's the title of the show.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, the Tambourine of Doom. It was just past. We were in the Christmas season still, because the Epiphany is part of the Christmas season. The Epiphany was that day, and as I was walking out the door, I kind of felt like I wanted to have something in my hand, because I knew they were going to have. I said, "There's no way we're going to." I was fearful to go down there because I had seen how they were attacking people. Like, I've lived it, So I said, it's not really smart to go completely. And I said, well, I'm not defenseless. I got God, right? I have God. And
someone's knocking at my door, so I'm.
Go ahead, I got you. She said, "Go ahead." So you didn't want to go empty-handed, and quite honestly, in all seriousness, we had all seen Antifa attacking people in the streets all year long, especially in DC. So
yes,
you wanted to have your God-given right to protect yourself, and then seeing how in DC where they won't let you have a gun, even though there's a Second Amendment in this country, you went with your second best option.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't want to have a weapon either. Like, I really wanted to give my protection over to God. Like, God is going to protect me. And so I was walking out the door, and the tambourine, which I bought for Christmas as a Christmas present, it was sitting right by the door, and it almost screamed out at me, "Take me!"
It was destiny, right? Now it's the Tambourine of Destiny and Doom, right?
So,
it was
I just grabbed it and I had it, and when they put it on that, did you ever hear the song Alice's Restaurant?
Yes.
Yeah. You can do anything.
And they say, well, the judge blew up the picture to be a 10x more glossy. That's literally what they did to this tambourine, and it looks so intimidating. Like, you look at it, like, literally, if you hit somebody with it,
I can see the liberals in DC. And this right here is her assault-style rifle, AR-15 tambourine, 2.3.
Right. Well, listen.
They just go to all these extents. Like, it was over the top drama school theater.
Do you know what I heard? A priest who was actually trying to put me down. And I don't think he knew I had a tambourine, and he was trying to offend me. And in his conversation, one of his sermons, he said, a tambourine is biblically a spiritual weapon against. I didn't know that.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And
He's making stuff.
He didn't know I had a tambourine. I think, again, this is like one of those things where it was like coincidental. I think God made.
I see.
But it was really strange, and I learned through this priest who was trying to guilt me into my, we're a nation. Well, if you are a nation under God, if you are putting God first, you would never have turned your back on the Capitol. You would have stayed. You would have confronted them. And when I say confront, I mean peacefully, because they are literally treasonous. They are stealing our children's future. They are stealing children. They have absolutely, our government is no longer a government, it's a corporation. And if we were to be respectful of those who came, and that's why I was fearful to show up, but I said no. Think of all those men and women who died, went overseas, and I'm going to be too afraid to show up at my Capitol?
Right.
And you're going to shame me?
It's your right to show up. It's your right.
Amen. Hey, look, so we're coming up right in an hour, and Sarah, there's no better place to live but put a pin in it. However, you hope you know that there's always the door's open. We want you to come back. You're going to, I believe, be doing the show with Cindy, and we can go into some longer answers and stuff like that. Real quick, before we sign off and before we get to the Bible verse, I want to say hi to Carolyn Congress out in Pennsylvania. She's one of my friends. Love everything she's doing up there in the great state of Pennsylvania, and maybe we'll have her on one day. Okay, we want to go to the Bible tambourine. Verse. Yeah. The Tambourine of Doom.
Tambourine of Doom.
This is Ephesians. Do you want to say it, Cindy?
Yeah. So Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness in this world, against spiritual wickedness in the high places.
Well,
Wow.
amen. And Sarah, I'm so happy that you came on today,
Yeah.
and that you're going to be coming back on. You're going to be doing it with Cindy, and another good show in the books. I love that you came on. I think this is I learned so much from this interview than I knew before, Sarah.
Cindy, it's great to see you again. I'm glad you reminded me.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear more about your story, and I'm going to look up your book.
Okay.
Amen, Kevin. And Kevin, we love everything you're doing for us every week. You know, you can hop in and give us pointers, whatever, whenever you want to.
And I just we've got a few viewers out there. I'm just going to give them a second. If there's any questions for Sarah before we end the show, speak up.
Yep. And Kevin, I've been bragging on our producer Kevin to all the people in the industry about how good he is and how he makes us look real good each week. So Kevin, we love you for that, my friend.
I got one other thing I want to tell people about. Our friend Harry Dunn has filed a case in court saying that he's whining that they haven't given him a plaque for his work on January 6th yet. And then he starts with all the narrative and all the lies about how horrible that day was and how, you know, he really stood up and defended the Capitol and blah, 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 blah. Well, Brian Mock and myself have filed motions to intervene. And
I didn't know that was you, Cindy. I didn't know it was the other one. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So anybody out there, it's very easy. It costs you no money. You write an intervening motion. You send it to the court. I'd love to see 100 of them out there.
I'll help do it. Anybody DM me or email me your info, and we'll get you one.
Let's do that.
I'll get you one.
Okay. Hey, and can I just, that's great. Absolutely. We got to do that. And can I just throw in there Bart, I always say his name wrong, Shively?
Bart Shively. Go ahead.
Yes, Bart.
Yeah,
Bart.
Go ahead and say what you want to, Sarah. Go ahead, say it.
Prayers to him, and God bless him.
And in that vein, we reached out to Shane Jenkins and Sarah McAbee from Standing the Gap, and I think maybe we'll have something about Bart coming up with those guys next week.
Yeah, I think we'll have a special show about Bart next week. I hope.
Yeah, they had to do a replay, and they're going to take it on, and they found I'm actually going to work more solo on my art project. That's where I'm going to.
Oh yeah, because you were working with those guys. Yes.
I was a guest. I did a guest appearance with them.
Yes.
And then
and I just felt like I know Shane has a relationship with. He was in jail with Bart. He's emotionally attached, and I felt like it was more appropriate to let Shane, run with that, and let's be in a supportive role of them while they do that.
Yeah, they got it. I wish them all success with that show. It's very important.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
It's a wrap, guys.
Have a
great weekend. Stay
do
safe.
anything I wouldn't do, and if you do, don't call me. Call your mom. Just joking.
All righty. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sarah, you can hang out for.
I know you told your friend you're not okay. And tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake